everybody. Good evening, good morning. If you're in Australia, we are live right now. And this is the third panel of today. So I just want to say hello to everybody. We're on multiple platforms. We are on acknowledging everybody's platform. We're on Seeking Heaven with Tamara. We're on New Realities. We're on Ascension Now. We're on Portal to Ascension. We're on Joan of Angels. And if you've been tuning in at all today, this is the third panel. It's been a long day. I've been streaming for over 6 hours today, different types of panels. We had the Ascension panel just a couple of hours ago, and we had the Galactic Origins discussion this morning. And the reason for that is because of the trailer that you just saw. And so if you haven't been tuning in today and you're not aware, starting tomorrow, we have 4 days of nonstop awareness on the Ultimate Star Beings Conference, which is moving the conversation from lights in the sky, are these weapons from some foreign adversary, from the fear in order to understand the bigger picture and the love and the consciousness. Because not only are we not alone in the universe, but these beings have been communicating with us and the conversation never ended. Many people on Earth have been in contact with them. And as we can tell now from a lot of the disclosures going on, many governments have been in contact with them for at least 80 plus years, and even retrieving bodies and craft. So this is becoming more mainstream. So what we did was decided to create the second annual, because we did this last year. It was 5 days last year. That was way too intense. I had to go 1 day less. And we are going 4 days this year, and was making it free because I feel this year is going to be huge when it comes for understanding that we're not alone in the universe, and the fact that we have been visited for so long and we continue being visited, and what that means, right? What that means for humanity. Because every single system, every power structure, if you will, from religion to economy to the poverty system, the healthcare system, will have to be reformed when a lot of the information that comes out is exposed. And part of that exposing is also exposing the truth of our sovereignty and how we have the potential to be sovereign masters of ourselves, no longer an external sovereign that we pay homage to and that we give reverence to, but paying reverence to the inner work and the inner soul that connects us to the cosmos. And so this event is going to be an infusion into the timeline of this consciousness. So do tune in, portaltoascension.org, and you can sign up under upcoming events there. And we're going to be live on all these platforms you're on right now. So go ahead and subscribe. We'll be live there too. We have around 1,400 people signed up for the streaming. So if you want to sign up for the streaming, check out the link in the description or the comments and tune in there. And hello to Melody. Hello to Core. Go ahead and keep the conversation going. Let us know where you're from. We're going to get into today's last discussion. So today, this panel, as you can tell from the title, is the Extraterrestrial Experience panel. We started out with Galactic Origins because that's the Portal to Ascension theme for the year. What is our ancestry? Did we come from the galaxy? And then we went into the Ascension panel about upliftment of, our consciousness vibration into this new reality. Now, this is where the conversation really has to take place, is that not only are we not alone, but we're actually having these conversations now. So we're going to be having the Extraterrestrial Experience panel speaking about these types of interactions that some of the panelists have, and then some of the panelists maybe have communicated, interacted with other people that have had connections or contact experiences themselves. So a panelist today, before I bring them on, we have Matthew John, internationally recognized spiritual teacher, intuitive psychic medium, trance channeler, intuitive astrologer, starseed guide, energy healer, speaker, and spiritual life coach. Also channels archangels, ascended masters, channels the Syrians, and I think other beings as well. We have Victor Furman, who is a Reverend Dr. Victor Furman, is a healer, spiritual counselor, and author whose deep and rich voice inspired the radio handle Victor the Voice. With his soulful sound, he helps people heal. He also does this through energy work and ceremony, and is the host and producer of Destination Unlimited. So as I'm doing this, I'll bring on Matthew, bring on Victor there. And then our last panelist is Craig Campobasso, and he's a multiple award-winning filmmaker, Emmy-nominated casting director. Craig was 15 when he started in the entertainment business. After graduating high school at age 17, he went to work behind the scenes on blockbuster films such as Frank Herbert's Dune, directed by David Lynch, and 2 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies as well. His latest book, he has another book after this. This by is a little old. His latest book was E.T. Species Almanac, Ultimate Guide to Greys, Reptilians, Hybrids, and Nordics, was a bestseller on Amazon and released in 2021. And his new book, The UFO Hotspot Compendium, All the Places to Visit Before You Die are Abducted, for MUFON Books, was released October 1st, 2022. So you can check those out. And Craig, Matthew, and Victor will all be a part of the event this weekend. So we're here to have a discussion to open up the energy. So welcome, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to start. Let's start with 'cause I know Matthew. I've seen what you share. You know, we've been in communication. I know you're connecting with these beings, and I feel, Craig, I'm not sure if you had any experiences yourself, or you probably have on some level.
Oh yeah.
Had conversations with many people, right? And Victor, your story is going to be new to me. So let's start with just the general conversation of first contact, right? Like extraterrestrial experiences, the conversation is so much about technology and things like that. But when you get down to the experiences that people are having, what kind of experiences are generally there? Do you feel this more of a benevolent contact? Because we have some people that call themselves abductees, right? And feel that maybe they're a victim to it. Is that a reality? And then there's people like you and people you connect with that probably have more of a benevolent experience. So Matthew, let's start with you.
Yeah, great questions. Thank you, Neil. So I've had dozens of clients over the years that have been abductees, specifically of the Greys, and it is a horrifying experience. It's something that I would never wish on anyone. So, I mean, that question, that word victim is an interesting one, though, right? Because there's a question to be posed at, people that are so-called victims of being abducted by the Greys. Is there something on a soul level where there's some sort of soul contract that their soul had actually desired that experience? And that's a big part of my work. I have been for over a decade doing what's called soul plan readings, where I actually look into what someone's soul planned for their earthly experience and also for their, many other lifetimes on Earth. And I actually have found that I think always that there's a specific contract. There's a specific reason why a soul is not only, giving consent to, but actually desiring to experience an abduction from the Greys. It has to do with balancing out other experiences from other lifetimes on Earth, and also for those that are starseeds, from other experiences on other planets. For example, some that come from Orion's belt may want to experience all sorts of different types of experiences of being taken advantage of on Earth, and also taking advantage of others because of the karma that lies in Orion's belt due to the Orion Wars, where, dark draconian beings went around conquering all sorts of innocent Orion planets, right? So I've interestingly enough, I found a direct connection between those that are abductees by the Greys and also those that are in the secret space program in this life, with actually having at least one lifetime serving in a very dark army on Earth, like the SS in Nazi Germany. And a lot of times I found that actually, I think a lot of these people, when they were in the SS in Nazi Germany, actually had basically signed away their soul in a way where they had consented to, in a future lifetime, actually being an abductee of the Greys. And I think there's a lot of other ways that this can happen, but that's what I've found. And then, of course, I've led people on hundreds and hundreds of these very benevolent contact journeys with the Syrians, with the Pleiadians, with the Lyrans, with the Andromedans, with the Yael, etc. So I have a great, I think, perspective of both sides of the story with that.
Thanks for sharing, brother. And Craig, so how would you reconcile, like, from the experiences that you have? I feel you've probably spoken to many people in the hybridization program as well. Actually, I know you have. And you probably heard some stories that people said that were kind of traumatic for them, right? So how do you reconcile those two worlds?
Well, it's just like Matthew was saying, every single person is going to have something different of why it's being attracted to them. Like for me, my experiences with Universal Master Teachers began when I was 26, right? I was a valley dude who went to work and went out and had fun on the weekends, never thought about extraterrestrial beings, what was out there in the universe. And then all of a sudden, within 2 years' time, these three beings took me from zero to awake, and then said, you know, you came here to write, and now you're going to sit down and write and keep writing. Don't stop, don't edit. Just write and write and write until you can write no more. So back then I had no idea what channeling was, what automatic writing was. They put 3 portals in my little 1-bedroom apartment at the time, and they would wake me up at 3 a.m. every morning to write. And I would see them come down the portals in their energy signatures, and they'd be standing around me. And in the first probably 6 months, my body would ring with chills because their energy vibration was so high, right? Until I just started acclimating to that energy. And then one of my guides is a 7'7" Pleiadian man who actually is a professor at the University of Melchizedek. And he's in charge of star seeds and training them before their journeys to Earth, right? So that was a big part of what I was writing. And that's what came out in these books. Oops, there we go. The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial. There we go. Saga. And the first book is called I Am Tehran. It's a 4-part book series. So it's really what they were teaching is about duality, because we're dualistic. All of them who are coming here to help us are fully conscious. They're in their divine perfection bodies, right? So, but all at different levels as well. And so it's we follow Tehran. Tehran was born dualistic in a fully conscious society. They explain there's in every 200,000 births, there's one that will be born dualistic, so that the fully conscious beings have a mirror and vice versa, right? And so we actually learn why Tehran was put in charge of the star seeds, right? Being dualistic as well. But also through books 1 and 3, we go through his journey of how he attains his Christendom, right? So the reader actually becomes the lead character of the book and goes out there. Now, I've met so many people throughout the years who are experiencers, and I'm sure that Victor and Matthew will agree that that really how the planet is going to raise is through star seeds and experiencers, because star seeds are the experiencers, because we're all raising our vibration to get the vibration of the planet up. And once we hit a certain plateau, it just starts to shift over. And once that shift happens, we rejoin galactic society, right? Because we're fully conscious. They're raising us. You know, I love the saying that we're all gods in training down here, right? And star seeds have ascended many, many, many times, right? Because they go in, they go out. There's lots of star seeds that love to do this service for different planets and things like that in their agenda. I have, though, met some people who have had some very dark experiences. We know that Calvin Parker had a very horrific experience in the Pascagoula incident. Female alien with the strange 3 robots did heinous things to him, and he feared her. She had visited him pretty much throughout his life. He would never talk about exactly what she did, because I believe that he was so afraid if he spoke it, she would come back, right? And I talked to his publisher about it, because he's in the UFO Hotspot book, you know, where you can go visit exactly where that experience took place. Another man was brought to me who was abducted, and they put eye implants in him. So when he lifted up his, eyelids and stuff, you saw that there was an apparatus going all around his eyeball. And he said, it's freaking me out because they're seeing everything I'm seeing. They're hearing everything I hear. And he said, and I know if I go and have them removed, which to him, to have your eyeballs popped out is not something anybody wants to have done. He said, I know they'll just put them back. Right. So, yeah, there's many things, I've talked to Yvonne Smith and Barbara Lamb because they've done so many sessions with people who have been abducted or contactees. And Yvonne, she said, everyone in the beginning, it's a frightening experience. It's terrifying because you don't know what's going on. And they're so strange looking to all of a sudden wake up and there they are, right? She said, but most of them come around, right? And feel that it was for a purpose and that in some way, shape, or form, they sort of escalated in their spirituality and they may have been given a gift, right?
Yep.
And this is just not from Greys. I mean, there's also, the ant people did this to the Allagash in the Allagash abduction. As well, they left those guys with a gift that, that came in many, many years later. So even though we might not understand it, but Matthew is absolutely like on Johnny on the money when you say, when you come in, especially as a starseed, you actually give your approval for them to check you. And they're also building, not building's not the right word, but creating hybrids, right? Which they call the seventh ray race, so that when the Earth is then changed over, this seventh ray race, which is part Earth and part extraterrestrial, human looking, will then come the guides and teachers and all the cities.
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
interesting because that concept, because I've done many experiencer conferences. I've done like 10 years ago, I did a 3-day event just on experiencers, and recently we did some things too. And it's almost like the hybridization thing has become even more controversial than it ever has now, because there's some people that are being taken, abducted, and that are so adamant about it being against their free will that we've had debates on our platform, heated discussions and debates. Actually, sometimes people had to leave. Like it was like that on our YouTube, and we have it there still. Where there was like hybridization program, and then those that have been taken and are part of the hybridization program that were like emotionally triggered, and one person almost crying about the trauma she continues to experience. Right. So the whole awareness that we have these soul contracts. Then there's the three elements basically from my being in this. We have the victimized people who believe it's a victim abduction, right? We have the people who believe it's a positive experience, experiencer, and then we have the neutral term, contactee. And to your point, Travis Walton thought that he was a victim until recently, and he was at my conference in 2018 speaking about how he shifted from thinking it was something happening to him to realizing the bigger picture. So ultimately, we are within this limited frequency of being able to be aware of why we came here and what we did, right? Why we chose to come.
Absolutely. But there are people, though, just so you know, that don't have a soul contract and they are abducted. There is a whole section also of those people. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I see everybody's point of view. I think it's whatever that person is feeling in the moment, and then they just sort of go along in their journey, right? And sort of figure it out for themselves. So
right.
Can I make a quick comment just on what Craig was saying? And Craig, I love everything you were saying. And this, I mean, look, all this stuff, everything we're talking about on Portal to Ascension for the next 4 days is fascinating. And I mean, I think if we're humble and honest, we don't really know for sure, do we? Right? We're all just researchers trying our best to figure this out. At least that's the way I see it. And just from my research over the years, I just want to give a bit of a counter perspective. I don't know what the actual truth is, just this is my research. I don't think that just being a starseed actually, I don't think that means you give any sort of inherent consent to be abducted by negative beings. I think it's something that happens on Earth. So I think that when, as a star being, you come into the astral field of Earth, so from the same place that you as a soul are planning out your lifetimes, that's where, if you desired to have the experience of being a contactee or abductee, you would then make that contract just as you would make a contract with another Earth being. So I just want to clarify from my perspective. Again, I don't know for sure, but I don't think just being a star, because from my research, about 40% of Earth are starseeds. So it's far more people than I think most people understand. And so obviously not that many people are being contacted or abducted by negative beings.
Yeah.
Right. That's true. And usually negative beings, if they're going to attack a starseed, not abduct them, but attack them, it's to knock them off their spiritual game.
Yeah. And look, that's the thing. Like, you know, I've done hundreds and hundreds of these regression journeys for people. They're called the Starseed Discovery Sessions. And I can't tell you how many times we've had interference from the Greys. A lot of times the Greys come in and they actually try to trick the client and myself. I know better, but they try to trick the client by taking on the form of what looks like a benevolent being. But we can always ask them, you know, there's some sort of weird rule where if you ask them 3 times, they have to tell you that they're...
Yeah, I heard that one too. So we'll talk about being tricked in a moment, because I want to get into that. Victor, I'd love to hear from you, brother. What are your thoughts on this? And also, we've never talked about your experiences before, so I'd love to hear, you know, what your experiences have been.
Well, this coming Wednesday will be my 71st solar return. And I use the word solar return in a very
happy birthday,
way.
brother.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I've always had positive experiences. My first one that I can recall, I was 5 years old. And I used to call my experiences night school, because the beings that I would be with, who would come and get me at night, would teach me things that I had no other source of information for. When I was 5 years old, 1958, in growing up in New York, my friends were into toy soldiers, and they were into sporting goods, and I wanted to build radios. My first toy was a crystal radio. I wanted to build electronics. I was fascinated by electronics and electricity. And a lot of that came from what I used to call my night school. Had a very interesting experience when I was in first grade. The teacher had a book on the shelf called You Will Go to the Moon. That was 1959. And I asked the teacher, can I borrow this book? And she said, of course. And I took it home. 2 weeks later, she said, you know, you borrowed the book. You have to bring it back. I said, I can't. She said, why? I said, because it's wrong. She said, how do you know it's wrong? I said, because I've been there. So that led to my parents being called to school, the counselors, all kinds of wonderful things, but labeled with an overactive imagination. But these things kept happening and happening. And my take recently, I put on my Facebook profile, I said, visitor from a small planet, staying here to make a difference. And that's really what I feel I've been doing the last 25 years. Yeah. I've been teaching, I've been healing, I've been bringing positive messages, because in this world we need those positive and wonderful and reassuring messages. We need to know that we're all brothers and sisters. We need to know that we're here to take care of one another. And one of the things, I had the blessing of attending an interfaith seminary, one of the first in the United States, or in the world actually, back in the 90s. And one of the things that I learned is that in every faith, there is an iteration of the golden rule, some version of the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Love your neighbor as thyself. Love thy neighbor as thyself. And if everybody put everything else aside and just practiced that, what a world we would have. What a wonderful world we would have.
That's right.
Had some non-contact experiences. I was in the Air Force from 1973 to 1979. And in 1977, I was stationed down at Homestead Air Force Base in Florida. And I was part of the base information team, and we would take rotations every Friday for weekends, answering phone calls from people who would call press or anybody who would call with questions about the Air Force or the base or anything going on. And one Friday I got a call, and this guy said, we saw a UFO by the base. And I had a line that I had to read. It was a disclaimer that the Air Force made us read, which basically said the Air Force closed Project Blue Book because the UFOs were not considered a threat to national security, and it is what it is. And that's all we were allowed to say. In any event, one Friday I got a call from my commander who said, "I'm taking over for the weekend. You don't have to do anything. I'll talk to you about it on Monday." I said, "Great, wonderful." That Monday morning he called me in. And he said, the reason I took over is on Friday night, a Cuban MiG came in, a defector came in and landed at the base, and we don't want anyone to know about it. And I said, I understand. The next week, I took the session on again, took on the responsibility of answering the phone, and I got another call. And the guy called me up and said about the UFO, and I read the disclaimer. And he said, well, what do you explain about the UFO that landed on the base last week? And this started my process of thinking. And later I came to research and found out that the story of the Cuban MiG didn't happen in 1977. It happened 5 years earlier than that. So something did land there. Later, Nixon took Jackie Gleason to Homestead Air Force Base. And the story is he showed him a craft and beings. So I never really got into that myself. I don't know the entire story other than what the press has been in the interviews and so on and so forth. Later on, my understanding led to something different. I started getting messages, and they would be like a voice in my head, not my voice, but a voice in my head, always a reassuring voice. And every time I listened to that voice, if that voice gave me an information to follow, it was a positive response. And it led to a series of what Carl Jung referred to as synchronicities, meaningful coincidences without causal connection. And every time one of these would come, I'd say yes and yes. And I believe that those who were my teachers, my guides, my family, my space family, were the ones who were sending me those messages. And I've had nothing but positive experience. One time I had a negative experience. And this was when I was stationed in Korea. And one morning I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had a sense that there was something in the room that shouldn't have been there. I believe they were grays. I sensed that they were grays. I didn't see them, but I sensed that they were grays. And I basically said, you must let me go. Let me go. Do not take me. And they let me go. In 1998, I attended a gathering here in New York, one of these conferences here in New York. And there was a woman by the name of Barbara Marciniak who wrote a book called Bringers of the Dawn.
Yes.
And she was talking about the Pleiadians. And as soon as she started talking, I heard her talking about it. I immediately connected with that energy. And I have a sense that those were my teachers when I was a kid growing up. I really resonated with that.
So I want to segue now and talk, because we mentioned grays a few times here. So let's have a conversation about grays. Okay. So that's one of the most common experiences. That's the ones that they show us and all that. And so Matthew, from what I've experienced of you so far in our interactions, you communicate with different types of galactic beings. And so have you received any information about the grays, and are all of their agendas negative, right? I'm not telling you what I believe, I'm just asking you to kind of get into
it. It's an interesting question. And I know there's a lot of different perspectives about grays. Some people think that there are benevolent grays. I think the delta between like what, the side that says, there are actually helpful and benevolent grays versus like me, which would say there aren't, they're all negative, is I think just a difference in the nomenclature of what we're calling these beings. For example, the Zeta Reticulans or the Zeta Reticuli, some people think that they're the grays. They're not. They're a totally different race of beings, and they're very benevolent. They're very cold and unemotional, but they're very benevolent. They look like the grays, but they're very benevolent. The grays that are doing the abductions, my understanding is they are soulless. So they're not like you and I. They're not like animals. They're not like plants where they have a soul. They're closer to AI. So they're closer to the AI robots that are, being created and will be continuing to be created over the next, couple decades. And they basically do the bidding of beings that do have souls, that are negatively oriented beings, like the reptilians, for example, that are essentially above them and essentially farm out their, genetic research that they want to do to the grays, for the grays to do it. So my understanding is they are not good beings at all. And I think it's when people are thinking of the good grays, I really think they're thinking of the Zeta Reticulans, and they don't know the difference.
All right. So I know, Craig, you speak of the grades too. So we'll segue into in a second, but follow-up question to that. So if the Zeta Reticuli maybe don't have a negative agenda, does that mean that they have souls?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And do all grays because we hear the story about humans basically, and they had to go underground, and the biologics of the human no longer worked. A gray body was created. Is this the definition of a gray? A gray body was created, consciousness transferred. Now they can't have emotions and they can't procreate, right? So is that kind of like the general?
Yeah. However they're created, it's not like a birth from a womb. It's a totally different. It's like a laboratory process, whatever it is, somewhere off planet. And again, I think what you're describing could be how it works.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. I just know that they're not like you and I. They don't have souls.
Yeah, because we have the EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities, that are kind of like the grays. Then we have interdimensional traveling grays, right? It runs the gamut from being in
Well,
this
that's
field.
the thing is there's probably different types of grays that come from outside of this galaxy that may, or even from outside of this dimension that may come in, and they may be a different type. Maybe there's gray. I'm sure there's, look, whether it's humanoid aliens, very tall humanoid aliens, blue looking like Avatar type aliens, there's an innumerable amount of different types of these beings, because the multiverse is unlimited, right? So I think there could be other types of grays that come in from other dimensions or from other galaxies that then may have interactions here. I don't know about them. All I know is that the grays that are the ones that do the crop circles, the negative crop circles, and the grays that are the ones that do the negative abductions are not good at all, and I don't think any of them have souls.
Matthew, are you saying there are 50 shades of grays?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Victor the Voice. Yes. Can you say it in a little more like 50 Shades type?
50 shades of grays. Yeah,
there we go.
50 shades of grays.
Yeah.
Craig, what are your thoughts on grays?
Well, I've in my research, there's people who have had negative experiences, positive experiences, but like Matthew was saying, where some of them are from, I usually get this mixed up. Like Zeta Reticula 1 is either more of the positive or the negative space, and the other one is purely positive. And so those beings don't like the name grays. They prefer to be called Zeta humans, right? If there were what we would say a gray type, even if they were tall, medium, large, supersized, if they were from Orion, they'd prefer to be called Orion humans. They just don't like that connotation that's here. There's so many varying things about the gray automatons, or exactly, they're built to do just what Matthew was saying. They're built to go and explore. They're built to do abductions. Their consciousness can be upgraded at any time. They're masters, whether they're on a ship or on their home planet. They, whatever is going on with them in that moment, they can help it to manipulate the situation, even if they're caught, right? And then there's beings, I had the extreme pleasure of sitting with Clifford Stone for a whole day and listening to him, because he was, I don't know if it was a gray or some kind of Zeta. He was an interfacer for the military, right? And they liked him, right? Charles Hall also was a facilitator for the tall whites and the grays that are out near Las Vegas, right? Because they both had their two little sections. And, I've gone out to dinner with him and sat in his lectures and picked his brain. His book is, just so interesting to have those experiences. But those beings had no qualms in killing a human if they thought it was going to harm them or their children,
Right.
right? And they supposedly had killed several guards before that were in his position,
Mhm.
right?
Well, how does this
Yeah.
connect to Greg and Matthew, Victor, whoever wants to chime in on this? But how does this connect to the hybridization program? Because, let's just go with Bashar's information that so
Yeah.
many people have been going deeper into since he came up with that. The Yaels, and I think it was 6 hybrid races, right? Yael was one of them. Forget the other ones' names now. And
There'll be
the Yaels,
seven in total, by the way.
7, yeah, okay.
Seven
So the
in total.
Yael supposedly are the ones that we're going to interact with first, and they're
Right.
going to teach us space travel.
Right.
But they are a hybridization of a gray race coming to interact with us. Actually, all of them are hybridizations of that. And yet people have hybrid children, there's hybrid children support groups, and all of this connects to the Gray's agenda of genetic manipulation, right? So, like, if most of them are nefarious, then what are the beings that they're creating? Are they creating like positive beings? Like, can you speak on that a bit, Craig? And then you, Matthew, and Victor, if you want to jump into.
Sure. I mean, it's all dependent on the agenda of who's ever doing the hybridization, right? Daryl explains that the Greys used to be human, the ones that he's talking about 300 years in the future, right? And his self there is Bashar, right? So they have a complete connect, right? I know his story really well. I cast his film Bashar First Contact, right?
Yeah, it's not the premiere.
And yeah, that was cool. And then we did Alienated a few years after that. But they degenerated, and they had to, I think he said they had to go underground, and they had to sort of turn themselves into Greys, and then they had to figure out a way to get back, right? And that was through human DNA. And so they started integrating it and then building each of the races as they're coming up over the thousands of years. Daryl is in my ET Species Almanac documentary. He explains it so well, exactly, that whole process of that kind of hybridization. So, yeah. Victor, do you have anything to say on that?
I just wanted to ask a question rather than having anything to say about it. I'm not an anthropologist, but aren't all of humanity initially hybrids? Aren't we hybrids?
Yes, we are.
Hybridized?
Yeah, we are. Here's what I say. Just like 23andMe, there's going to be a day where you can do the test and they're going to say, you're part Pleiadian, you're part Venusian, you're part this, you're part that, because we really are. We really are. We have all of that DNA. I mean, really, this whole planet is DNA royalty because we are such a great hodgepodge of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to comment on a couple of things. So I haven't dug far enough into Bashar's work to know really even the details of the story you were sharing, you and Neil and Craig were sharing. All I can say from my end, from my research, independent of anyone else's channelings, research, etc., is the Yael are completely benevolent beings. I haven't heard anything about what you guys described about a hybridization between the Yael and the Greys. I don't know. I just haven't heard anything. And as far as like, the comment, Craig, about like the 23andMe for your galactic DNA, I like to explain this a lot, that the way I see it and my research would show that there's a difference between the DNA of your physical vessel and your galactic origins as a soul. They're two different things. As a soul, my soul originates in the Andromeda Galaxy. I've been a Blue Avian. I've been a Sirian. I've been an Orion being. And who knows, maybe there's others I haven't even discovered about myself yet. So that's my 23andMe for my galactic origins as a soul. However, if we ran, if I did a genetic test for my DNA, I'm going to, of course, align with my blood family, right? And yes, my understanding is that the Lyrans and the Pleiadians specifically, we have their DNA in the entire human genetic pool. And I do believe that there are probably others that I'm just not sure enough about yet to be able to say for sure they are. The Pleiadians and the Lyrans, I know for sure. And funny enough, we look very much like the Pleiadians. Some humans, not all, a good percentage do. And a good percentage look somewhat like some types of Lyran beings, right? But again, there's probably many others, and that may be something I haven't discovered fully yet.
Yeah, I just looked it up. So the Yayael beings are the fifth hybrid race of the Sasani, which were originally the Greys. So the first one, and it's actually in the book, Matthew, under Sasani beings. Just so you know, the first hybrid race were the small Greys, known as the Mazé, is how he said it. Then the taller Greys were known as the Mazani. Sasani beings, which is what Bashar is, half human, half gray. Sheyael beings are slightly more human looking, and then the Yayael beings are very human like. The sixth race will be Earth humans becoming the sixth race known as the Inaka. And then there's two more after that I'm not sure if those have been created yet. So,
So a concept that I hear quite often is that within this reality of duality, that there is no just one polarity within races, right? That there's positive and negative polarity. I guess when you get to a state of no emotional expression and not being able to experience it, you can act very cold and detached from actually having empathy towards any being, right? But one of the races that we have the most controversy from, that I would say a lot of people kind of feel that they're all negative, would be the reptilians, right? And just like you shared, Matthew, there's so many different human species, right? Well, there's got to be a lot of reptilians, and from my experience, there are, and serpentine beings and dragon races, all having the same ancestry connection, right? And I actually had a regression last year where I saw myself as 3 different reptilian beings, right?
Okay.
So, I would love for us to just take a moment here to talk about polarity, especially when it comes to the reptilians.
Yeah, I also at one time kind of had a weird experience on a psychedelic of seeing myself as some sort of reptilian type being, right? And I agree. I don't think that all are negative. Actually, I'm sure that all are not negative, that there's many types of benevolent reptilian type or serpentine type races around the galaxy and around the universe. However, again, like the Greys, the ones that are interacting with Earth and the ones that are here are all negative. They are all of the ones that I believe live at the center of the Earth, the full winged ones, and then the ones that are the hybrids that go around as our very famous politicians and celebrities, the people on the Epstein Island list, etc. Those are all negative reptilians. I believe, and I'm pretty sure there are positive reptilian and serpentile races. What does the word reptilian mean? It just means that it's a type of being that looks reptilian, like an iguana, like a gecko, like a salamander, etc. Right? It doesn't imply any negativity. Now, when we talk about the draconian beings, right, from Draco, we're specifically talking about negative reptilian beings that are the ones that are here on Earth causing all the problems and really have caused all the problems in the entire galaxy. But it doesn't mean that there also aren't some positive reptilian beings out there.
Yeah, just to remember, my beings are Pleiadian beings too, Victor, and highly spiritual. And the one thing that always stuck with me in the beginning is they said that only judge the individual and not the race. Right. So what I have found in now, I don't do regressions or anything like Matthew does, but a lot of people do find their way to me. A lot of the very smart indigo children and that kind of thing. I've met a bunch of them. Some of them Even one boy at even age 11 spoke 5 different star languages. I mean, amazing thing. He also spoke Pleiadian. I had him speak Pleiadian for me. And I got an EVP, a Class A EVP of a woman on a ship speaking another language, which is not an Earth language. And I played it for him, and he goes, "Oh, that's Pleiadian. They're telling you that they set up a base near you." And I said, "Okay, that's pretty cool." But the thing that was happening to him and his brother and his father is because these kids were so brilliant and smart. They were brainiacs. I mean, they had a whole thing set up at their house where these kids were building things, and they were telling me how they were going to build this and how it was going to do this for the earth and that for the earth. I mean, these were like high masters in these kids' bodies. But they were having terrifying nightmares of reptilians every single night. They were chasing both boys and the father, and they were all having the exact same dreams, right? So, so they came to me, and, I said, "Look, I had it in the beginning. What you have to do, you just give them a process, because you can make it not happen anymore, right? Just like Victor said in his experience. And it was interesting because I said, "Look, they're just trying to knock you off your game so that you go into fear. And once you rise above fear, and if you want, put them in a little bubble of love, they'll run far, far away." Right?
I wonder if human aversion to reptilians, be it snakes or alligators or crocodiles or whatever they might be, is something that's being projected based on those ancient fears.
I think so. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Very well could be. Yeah.
I've been that's something I've been thinking of deeply lately, because over the last year, as I said, I had actually 2 regressions, and then I had 2 weeks of plant medicine, and all of those experiences, including the plant medicine, filled in gaps of the same experience, and they're all connected to the history of reptilians. And I'm actually doing a presentation on it, or I'm going to do it in a few months. And what I got from one of those ceremonies I was in was that there was a trauma, a reptilian trauma, and we put it in our text, And so we kind of blanket statement every single one of those beings. And also I got that a lot of the benevolent ones that have expanded consciousness, tapped into a higher power, a lot of those ones realize that the darkness and the light work in the way that it should, that it's a beautiful dance. Everything needs to manifest the way it is. And they also go with the law of non-interference. So when they see us struggling, they kind of see it as part of our growth, and they have a hands-off approach. Who are the ones that don't have a hands-off approach? The beings that don't see that, right? The beings that want to actually have affect our free will or have an agenda to put on. So a lot of times we only get to experience part of the race that has an agenda, whereas the other part of the race is unconditionally watching us. And when it comes to the dragon races, unconditionally supporting us without even needing any acknowledgement, because ego isn't even involved in it. So that's some of the information that came from me.
And look at the serpent in the Garden of Eden. This is where it started.
And also, going back to Zecharia Sitchin's books, right? Who were these beings? These were the reptilians. These were the Anunnaki are the reptilians. They're a group of them, right? And they were mating with humans in not the consensual way, probably, and creating some sort of hybrid race. So of course, there's going to be that unconscious trauma written into all of the human collective.
I'm surprised more people don't talk about dolphins. Do you know that marine scientists have found that dolphins actually have their own Bible? In their version of Ecclesiastes, it says, "To everything there is a season and a time for every porpoise under heaven."
Okay. I knew that was a joke. I just had no idea where it was going.
When he said they have their own Bible, I had to wait a second.
I know. Poipus.
From New York, Poipus.
Neil, you were talking about we only, at least humans that haven't yet developed the upper chakra connections, we could say, or haven't delved into this stuff, that our only kind of reference point is with the negative beings that do have an agenda. And it's spot on, because what the Syrians tell me all the time, and to my groups all the time, is that they are intentionally not interfering, and that the Pleiadians as well are intentionally not interfering, because it's all by contract. There's a specific plan for the planetary ascension of Earth. And back in Atlantis and Lemuria, supposedly the Pleiadians interfered more than maybe they should have, looking back, and they kind of said, okay, we're never going to try to tinker with things to that extent again, because it actually ended up backfiring, because it would create, I think, a counter resistance of more darkness, and then we saw what happened with Atlantis and Lemuria. But nowadays, the Syrians and the Pleiadians, they're watchful eyes. I do believe the one thing they do is they prevent nuclear war, because nuclear war has happened many times before on this planet.
Right.
And if it were to happen again, it would be way worse than before. But at least, it'd be like what happened in Atlantis, which was way worse than World War II. And supposedly what happens is, when a planet has some sort of nuclear war on the surface, it actually creates ripples. It creates kind of like a tear in the space-time fabric. And it actually, the negativity and the negative karma then leaches out to the rest of the galaxy. And so the whole galaxy as a whole has to deal with it. Supposedly, from my understanding, is we're at the point right now in our galactic history where the entire galaxy itself is actually intending to up-level in vibrational frequency as she prepares to merge with the Andromeda galaxy and create a new super galaxy. So because of that, so many planets around the Milky Way are attempting their ascension process now. And that's why Earth's ascension is so important, because every planet around the Milky Way that's stuck at 3D has to actually ascend now.
One of the things that I've personally experienced over the last few years, and maybe it's age and maturity and what have you, but I'm meeting more and more people that I consider to be part of my soul family, and having the same experience that they're having.
Yes.
This sense of this emergence of this wonderful knowledge and this wonderful empathy, also in compassion. And I think that this is what we're working toward. This is what it's about, at least for me. That's what it's about.
Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, resonate deeply with you saying whole galaxy is ascending. And, a lot of people say that we're doing something that hasn't been done before, and it's up-leveling all of that into this higher consciousness.
Yeah.
Plus, we've been going through these cycles of time, this resets, the great year, evolution, devolution, something I actually brought up on both other panels today, discussion about that. If we've been going through a remembrance and a forgetfulness over and over and over again, it's almost like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and not even learning the lesson.
It's actually by design, because it's a spiral. So every time we try it, we're actually a little bit closer to the galactic center than before.
Right. So are we breaking free from that cycle to continue evolving without forgetfulness?
Yes. Yeah. This is the time where it's planned that we are, and we really have to, because the galaxy herself has made the decision to basically eliminate this experiment of having negative consciousness run amok, run free without any rules throughout the galaxy, because it's caused so much damage throughout the galaxy, and it's made it so difficult for the galaxy herself. It's as if she is feeling so much weight from this virus of negative consciousness that she says, okay, now I'm making the decision, this experiment is over, and so all planets, all systems must ascend. Now, from our perspective on our little planet, that could be billions of years. We don't know, right? We're just experiencing in our own timeline, our own experience of time, right? But, look, we look at stars, right? We look at the stars, and we're seeing lights from millions of years ago, right? So the whole concept of time is a whole nother thing. But from our perspective, it has to happen now, and it will, because we've entered the photon belt again. And we've entered the photon belt much closer to the galactic center than ever before. So because of that, we have the requisite light that is streaming in from the galactic center. Our sun is basically this relay point. It's directing it towards our planet, and we're able to spiritually ascend. It's not going to happen in a day, a year, or even a decade. It's going to take a while, right? But as we enter the Aquarian age, astrologically speaking, Pluto's entering Aquarius now, and then the entire planetary age of Aquarius begins around 2043, most Western astrologers, myself included, would say. So over the next couple decades, we're absolutely stepping into that, and there's no turning back.
Right, right. So this is a good segue into some closing points there. So if we are going into this ascension process, could be a day, could be 20 years, could be longer. How do we get to a place sooner than later where we don't live in chaos, right? And then maybe it's a perspective shift. Do we have harmony in store for us in our near future? Or is it, as I said, is it a perspective shift? Is there harmony now? And if we see the systems crumbling and we're like, oh my God, my bank account and my job as a lawyer is no longer valid, freaking out. And do we just expand our consciousness to realizing that this is all crumbling for a specific reason? So how can we get to that world and create harmony now? And it definitely would start from within. So what's your take on that? Let's start with you, Craig.
Everybody always asks me what they can do. And I always say, actually, just spiritually work on yourself, realize that your emotions are the tools to mastery. When you master your emotions, you will become fully conscious, right? You will be working from the heart. You'll join the heart and the mind will become one. And you will no longer have your ego, right? And so I think it really is, if everyone concentrates on that. There are certain people that are here to do the mass for the masses, but I believe if everybody really just stays there, then those sparks, those connections will go out. They're going to reach out. They're going to even touch everything in the universe that's going to help spark, that will get us into the next level. Now, do we really all know how that's going to happen? I mean, we've all thought about it, but I don't know. Is it a subtle shift and we're here and then we're there and we don't even know it? Or how does that happen? I don't know.
Right. I would say that science, including maps of our solar system, our galaxy that Matthew spoke about, us going back in the photon belt into a different position in our galaxy, there's actually actual NASA trajectories of the planet that prove what we've been talking about metaphysically. We are entering the milk of the Milky Way. There is the high concentration of ether here. There is a bow shock going upwards like a drum being banged from our galaxy with a frequency bow shock hitting our planet, right? So there's a lot of this is all being proven now through science. To me, metaphysics is metaphorical quantum physics. Metaphysics is the feminine creative way of explaining it. Quantum physics is the masculine way. The masculine way is just facts. Metaphysics is poetry. The singularity and the oneness, the same thing. So this is pretty much inevitable, and how we get there and how long it takes is probably going to be up to us. So I'd love for Matthew, you go next, and then Victor, if you could share what you feel we can do in order to create that world within us.
Well, like in Men in Black 3, the future hasn't yet been written, right? By who was that guy? The guy that showed him that the Mets winning the World Series in 1969, right? Anyways, look, there's so many possible timelines here that we can take as a collective, right? The future is not fully written. The ascension is written, but how and when and what events take place and what events don't take place, that is not yet fully written. And that is up to what, I look at it like a mathematical algorithm, right? If we amalgamate all of the levels of consciousness of all 8 billion humans, right, where are we at? Because that's the attracting mechanism, right? And that's also the attracting mechanism as to actually getting more direct assistance, right? There's so much indirect assistance that's happening all the time. So many people, including myself, have wonderful direct channels with extraterrestrial beings, and they're channeling guidance through us, right? So there's always been that indirect assistance, and at times on Earth, Lemuria, Atlantis, ancient Egypt, ancient Sumeria, there's been more direct experiences, direct assistance. That's why we can see it in the hieroglyphs, etc., right? But what will call in more direct assistance in the ascension is when we, as a whole, as the amalgamation of the human consciousness reaches higher and higher levels, right? As we start to up level in frequency to the upper levels of the third density, that opens, like we said before, right? Craig, you said us as a planet joining the Galactic Federation, like that's a real thing, right? And that's something that I believe that I don't think we're that far away. I don't think we're more than a couple decades actually away from that, right? From that opening to occur. But in the interim, I mean, we can look at what's going on in the world, and although it's not us, the light workers, doing it, it's dark forces that are perpetuating war. There's more war now than there has been since the end of World War II, which is frightening, right? And my astrological predictions, are showing much more war. The Syrians have warned us of more things to come. They said even look for, February this year, for example, for something to happen. So there's, in the short term, this decade, next decade, we can expect on any timeline more chaos, more war, more problems on the planet, because there's just not enough of the populace that has spiritually awoken yet. There is not enough of the populace that has, like you said, Victor, entered into the heart frequency that are emanating love as we are as light workers. It's just not enough people yet. You and I and those watching, we are the early awakeners. We are the A plus, the honor students, right? That come from other star systems that have said, okay, we're going to be the planetary leaders while most of the planet is still asleep. We see more and more evidence of the planet waking up. We see things like yoga and Tai Chi and tarot and meditation and, coaching and just, seeking out therapy rather than, stuffing it all in, right? We see it more and more in the mainstream, in the zeitgeist, right? But it's still just the early crumbs, and we can always see where we're at in a very real way by looking at the news. Okay, there will be a time when the news is not showing us images of war, because there is no more war. There will be a time when the news is probably information about what's going on in the galaxy, right? And probably connecting with different beings, whether they're there or via whatever technology, right? What's going on in the Pleiades? What's going on in Sirius? What's going on in Arcturus, etc. Right? There will be a time, but it's going to take decades at a minimum.
I would just add to that, and to sort of pick up on what Craig was saying before. One of the gifts that they've given me is the gift of poetry, and I've written many poems over my lifetime. And one that I wrote a few years ago was called The 3 L's, and I'm not going to give you the whole poem, but the 3 L's are concepts or gifts that we can give to one another. And if we embrace these 3 L's, we can change humanity. The first L is listen. Really listen and hear what everyone else is saying. Don't interject your own opinion. Don't try to change them. Don't make them wrong for their opinion. Just listen, and listen with compassion. The second is look. To look with eyes of compassion. To recognize that whatever is going on for you, that's also going on for me. And what's happening to you reflect what's happening inside of me? And how can I learn from that? And how can we both get healed and grow in that process? And the final one is to love. Look, listen, and love. And if every human being can embrace that, that's where we have to start. We can't wait for them to come and descend upon us and correct us. We have to start that correction ourselves. Mm-hmm. There's one more thing I'd like to share. My mother passed in January of 2020. And as soon as she passed, I started having these visions of circles and rings and circles and rings. And it brought this poem through me, and I'll share it with you very quickly. The path of great beauty in so many things, from atoms to galaxies, circles and rings. Natural wisdom that dwells there within, from naught to 360, that magical spin. We circle each other in gravity's dance, as Gaia circles Sol, the solar romance, as Luna circles us in life-giving motion, drawing the tides and inner emotion. And the age of the oak is found in its rings, as in woman and man and all living things. And when the rings stop and life comes to an end, we'll all circle back and dance once again.
That is so beautiful.
That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think that's a good note to close it out on. You know, so
Yeah,
I want
beautiful.
to say thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And just take a minute, just a few seconds each, and just let people know, what you're up to and where they can find out more. And actually, Matthew and Craig, please let us know what you're going to be presenting on.
Yeah.
At the conference.
Sure. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Okay. I'm going to be presenting on the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac and UFO Hotspots. My 2 books have a PowerPoint, which, thank you, Neil, I learned how to do. I was playing around with it here earlier. You can check out my website where all my books are at autobiography.com. autobiography.com. So you can find the Tehran 4-part book series and ET Species Almanac. I'm also the filmmaker of Stranger at the Pentagon, the Valiant Thor story. Those are the posters behind me. And so you could go to strangeratthepentagon.com. You can watch a short film there. Won several awards. And I have all of Dr. Frank Strange's out-of-print books there, posters, all that kind of stuff. I have about 6 DVDs left of the short film. So if anybody's interested, you can get them there. I sold the last bunch at the MUFON talk last Sunday. So, all right, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. So you can find, well, first of all, my talk is Monday at, I think, 4:10 Eastern, 1:10 Pacific, right? That's Discover Your Star Origin. So I'm going to teach you the fundamentals of what a starseed is versus what an Earth seed is. I'm going to teach you the fundamentals of the densities, 3rd density, 4th density, 5th, 6th, 7th, etc. I'm going to teach you the fundamentals of actually the mechanisms from, I would call it like a galactic quantum physics perspective of how you actually do come from, let's say, Sirius or Arcturus or wherever to Earth, right? What is a fractal? How do you actually create a fractal? How does that work? We're going to talk about, I'm going to give an overview of all sorts of different ET races that many of my clients have interacted with in the astral or even in the physical over the years, many that I've interacted with in the astral, give you all sorts of traits of each race and also traits of star seeds of those races. So if you're a Sirian star seed, why is it that you probably like water, right? If you are a Pleiadian star seed, why is it that you probably have had a focus on relationships in your ascension lifetime? If you're a Lyran star seed, why is it that you're probably pretty good at cooking or like traveling around trying different cuisine? So I'm going to give you the basics of all sorts of different starseed races and how it basically manifests when you're on Earth. And we'll also talk a little bit about purpose as a starseed and how you can actually figure out what your purpose is from the perspective of your galactic soul or star origin soul. And also, if you want to find any of my stuff, it's youaredivinehuman.org. I have a whole library of free articles, videos, etc. You can also check out all my programs, including my Ascending as One program. That's my signature mentorship program on Sundays.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Matthew, Craig. And I'm excited for these presentations and everybody tuning in. Tomorrow we go live. Obviously, if you're listening to this in the future, you can still sign up. All of us on our websites and the link in the bio on Instagram. It's in the description of the YouTube videos that we're on. You can sign up. Only if you sign up do you get unlimited replay access. We're going to be live on all the channels, but as soon as it's over, it's removed from all the channels. We've got to play within the algorithm of YouTube. So it's going to be removed, and we'll just have the replays on our back end of our website. So portal2ascension.org. Sign up there if you want to tune in. Craig will be there presenting. Matthew will be there presenting. And 31 other presenters and 7 MCs, okay? We got music, we got entertainment, we got a lot of different MCs because we like to make these things exciting. Sitting at your computer 8 hours a day, even I who do it full time kind of get tired of that sometimes. So we like to make it really entertaining, which is why you also get unlimited replay access. And Victor is going to be one of the MCs. So Victor, I want to hand it over to you. I would love to hear your intention for this event and to close out this whole panel with a poem. That'd be great if you can.
I think that my intention, in addition to being an MC, and I'm really excited about being the MC for Mary Rodwell. That is really exciting me. I think that
Yes.
would be a wonderful opportunity. But again, to share all of the messages that everyone is bringing, and these messages are powerful, and I believe also positive messages. And I think for me, that's the essence of this. The essence of this is for us to recognize who we truly are. And when we recognize who we truly are, we have no choice but to care for and love one another. And I think that's, for me, that's the essence of it.
Amen.
And my
Right.
podcasts are on Om Times Radio. I have two podcasts. One is called Destination Unlimited. The other is called Vox Novus, omtimes.com.
Beautiful. Do you want to close it out with another poem?
You know what? Let me, you got to give me a minute to pull it up because I wasn't prepared to do this. But if you bear with me for 1 second, I will pull it up. And I think this is the one that might be the best here. Hang on 1 second. Actually, you know what? Not a poem. I'm going to share something else, if I may.
Yes, please.
One of the things that I loved growing up in the 1960s and 70s was the band called the Moody Blues. I'm sure most of you have heard of the Moody Blues.
My dad passed away last year. He loved the Moody Blues. Yeah.
And Justin Hayward, who was the lead singer and guitarist, wrote a song in 1970 called Question. And when I heard it the first time, it became ingrained in my heart. It became embroidered into my heart. And the lyrics go like this: why do we never get an answer when we're knocking at the door with 1,000 million questions about hate and death and war? It's when we stop and look around us, there is nothing that we need in a world of persecution that is burning in its greed. Why do we never get an answer when we're knocking at the door? Because the truth is hard to swallow. That's what the war of love is for, the war of love. And then it goes into a softer refrain. It says, it's not the way that you say it when you do those things to me. It's more the way that you mean it when you tell me what will be. And when you stop and think about it, you won't believe it's true that all the love you've been giving has all been meant for you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
If you want to hear more poems from Victor, come to the event over the next 4 days because he'll have some more there. So Matthew, Craig, Victor, thank you so much, guys. Appreciate
Thank you.
And see you guys at the conference.
Yes. Bye, guys. Bye, Victor. Bye, Matthew.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Thank
Neil.
you.
See you soon.